Well, this is great and welcome to another video. I'll try not to keep looking at you because I've got to keep an eye on the path. But I'm out on my e-bike today. It's the Big Game Bike Buffalo 2 and it's just fantastic. I'm out for a bike packing camp and I've just fully loaded this bike. I'll go through what I've got quite soon, but I did a recce a couple of weeks ago on a bit of woodland quite close, so it isn't too shaky, and I'm just about there now, but I'm just making my way down this hill now. The bike's been fantastic going up the hills, and yeah, it's just great. It's a full UK legal bike, which means it's got certain restricted output and it doesn't have a free throttle where you can just power away, and I just love it. I'm not into e-bikes as such because I do think there's a lot of unnecessary carving up of the countryside, but I think this one, it's got very, very fat tyres. I'm not going to take it off track, so I've got this really nice, it's almost a metal road, a lot of it, but it's certainly gravel track, and I know I'm not doing any sort of harm to the environment with this. And yeah, there's also a place obviously in e-bikes for people that can't use normal bikes, can't get out, which I do obviously support, but generally I'm a little bit against them. But this, I'm going to keep it on the paths and it's just great fun. Anyway, I'm nearly at my little bit of woodland now. Oh, I hope this is working all right. Straighten you out hopefully in post-production, and we'll see what's in store for us here. A bit of cooking. I've got my firebox with me, but I've also got a gas stove. So let's straighten you up there. I'll suss out how it all looks underfoot, have a good dig around and decide what sort of cooking method I'm going to use. But I'm really looking forward to this, and we're going to try a hammock camp. You know me and hammocks. Right, I've got to ride two-handed, otherwise I'm straightening you all the time. But I'll speak to you when I'm at the place. So this is the bike. Look at the size of the tyres on that. I've got some front panniers here. In here I've got a sleeping bag, well, my sleeping quilt, and I've also got a quilt for the hammock, and in there is my hammock and a tarp. I've got all my electrics here, got my seat, all my knives and firelighting equipment in here, and a bit more camera equipment. I've got some camo netting, which has slipped a little bit just under the seat, some in there and some here. It's going to be a real stealth camp. More camera equipment, see how, if I didn't film this, see how light I'd be, and some food. And on my back, there we are, I've got quite a bit more equipment, which I'll of course go through. And in here is my little bit of woodland that I found. It's a mixture of pine and broadleaf. I didn't want to go into a pine forest, although there's plenty here, because over the years you can get a bed of pine needles which can go about 2 or 3 feet thick, and if you're thinking about having any sort of a fire other than using a gas stove, then you've got to really dig down to be ultra safe. So I picked a broadleaf wood. I'm going to have a really good dig down where I decide to set up my camp, and if I'm not satisfied that it isn't safe to use the firebox, then of course I'm not going to use it. But that's the reason I picked a broadleaf. You can see from here that it goes down a very steep hill, so any walker that's on this track or going away on this track here is going to have a pretty good, well, going to have a pretty good job trying to see me, because literally you have to walk right across to the edge and halfway down the embankment to see if there's anyone there. So I'm actually not that bothered. So I'm going to get my stuff off it, hide it, put a camo net on it, and then set up camp well into these woods. It's just going to be fantastic. So now that the bite's obviously much lighter, I'm going to move it into a little dip down here and cover it in camo netting, and hopefully it'll be nice and safe for the night. I've hidden my bike, and hopefully here's a screen shot now, a cutaway to how camouflaged I've made my bike. And I've come deep into the woods now and found, well, there's just countless trees to use for hammock camping, but the main thing with this is to obviously find some trees about, I don't know, 16 paces I make it, which is sort of foot end to foot end as the sort of ideal distance, whereas you don't get too much of a sag on the hammock there. And the other thing, really importantly, is to look upwards, because that's where the widow makers come from, and it's to make sure that there's no sort of dead standing branches that are just propped up on the neighbouring tree that with a gust of wind could come down. So there's nothing there, hopefully. First thing I'm going to do is put up the hammock. I haven't put it up for a couple of years, so I've got to teach myself how to do that. And I'm going to sort of drape a camo net over the top of it using a ridge line. So that's the hammock up now. I've used those tree huggers, and then I've got some Dyneema, what are they called again? Continuous loops. I can't remember. So long since I've camped with the hammock, I can't remember the name of that modification I put to sling the hammock up. But I've used some homemade marlin spikes to connect the name of that thing, which I'll put up there, to the hammock, and it drapes really nice and level. It's a nice distance off the ground. I've sat on it and it seems fine. So now I've just got this hank of paracord now, and I'm going to put up a ridge line so I can put a camo net over me. Always have a stick handy and in your pocket for this bit, because you make your ridge line anchor point and then you realise you haven't got anything to put to stop the loop going through, and then you have to bend down and get a tree and get a twig, and it all comes crashing down. So here we go. Oh. So this is my setup. I've got it open at this side because the footpath, well, it's not a footpath, but the farm path is on the other side of the hammock, so I want that bit to be lower, and I also want to be able to see out a little bit rather than have the camo net draped all over me. So this is what we have, and I'll come and have a look from the path and see how camouflaged it is. But I know it's not quite the brown colours that we've got predominantly in this woods, but let's go back 50 yards or so and have a look and see how well it's hidden. Well, I'm over there, you can just see it, but I'm not even a quarter of the way back to the farm track yet, so I'm really confident that that's nicely hidden. I can get on with the rest of the evening. That's a underquilt from Ginge, and you'll notice that I just have it sagging, and it doesn't need to be tight up against the hammock, because what you want to do is when you're lying in it is have an inch or two of free air, well, airspace, so that you don't crush the down. So I'll maybe adjust it a little later to see how it does, and it doesn't need to cover your whole body either, so this is just sort of my shoulders, and it'll go to about halfway down my legs, which is absolutely fine. And I've got my enlightened equipment quilt, which I love. I'm just going to make the foot box up. And I don't think I'm going to be cold. Just a quick run through the gear that I bought. Got about 5 litres of water, I've got my sip pad, I've got an empty water bottle there in case I get caught short in the night. Got my chair, I've got a lovely cast iron pan, food, more food. In there I've got my fire steel hand wipes and some coffee sachets. I've got Ginger's utility pouch, a scarf, bug net and another jacket in case I get cold. Got my homemade tarp just in case I needed a bit of weather protection, but I don't. Just some bags that the stuff came in. I've got a jet boil stove, which I'm going to shortly make a cup of tea on, teapot, titanium plate, some hand warmers, ingredients, gloves. Here's my pillow, which I'm going to use now, and a chopping board. And in the crossbar I've got my Abisko saw, wash bag, more a knife and some smidge. Oh, and not forgetting, look at this underneath. This is my pouch made by Ed from Woodland Crafts, which is housing my gifted, lovely titanium firebox stove, which I'll show you shortly. But I'm going to use some gas now to get a cup of tea on the go. I'm just getting down to what is really just earth as opposed to any pine needles, and there it actually feels wet to the touch, which is important, and I need to get a decent space all around, so I'm happy that that's a nice safe area for a firebox. So I've got down to the clay now. This is called a jet boil stash, and it's pretty neat, but I thought it had a self-igniter on it, but it doesn't, which is a bit disappointing. Never mind, I am prepared. I like that. It's really nice and secure. It's got these, this is a heat exchanger, and it also fits neatly into these knurled bits on the stove, so it can't actually shift from side to side. Neat little setup. Let that stew for a couple of minutes. Well, welcome back and cheers. Oh, it's nothing like that. Well, what a place I've found. It's so far away from any roads, there's just absolutely no traffic noise. I think it's a reasonably busy track in the week behind me, because there are a lot of pine forests which they obviously harvest, but at this time it's bank holiday, and I haven't seen a soul. It's just brilliant. This is woodland, I say, mixture of pine and broadleaf trees, and it's just ideal. It's sloping, but it's got these lovely little plateaus as you go down, so I found a nice flat bit to make my camp. So yeah, it's just a great little piece of woodland. You can now see that the area I am has got some lovely hills in the background. It's a mixture of pine, woodland, and some tracks going through, and every so often I hear a woodpecker, which is just lovely. I'm not going to show gathering wood, chopping wood and that sort of thing. There's tons and tons of dead standing wood, lots of little stalks coming off these fallen pine trees as well, which means I could be able to get some fat wood that I can use throughout the year. Got my Barco saw, which I'm going to use with good old Ed again made me the sheath for that. And just look at this, and in here I have got something I've always wanted, and I know I'm being a bit well, doing my stove a disservice, but I've always wanted one of these titanium Bushcraft Essentials firebox, and this is the firebox XL, I believe, titanium, and I'm going to be using that. We'll come to the cooking later. I don't want the light to fade. It's, well, some really long nights, but I'm in Woodland, so I'm mindful that the light doesn't last as long as it would if I'm out in the open. So I'm going to gather up some wood and then get this fire going, and we'll do some cooking. And this is the ingredients for tonight. Got the amazing tomahawk steak, just a mixture of salt and pepper in there, some rosemary, some vine tomatoes, a couple of full garlic bulbs, and loads of butter. Now I'll close the comment section if anyone says anything about that. I might even need more. Garlic. Loads of rosemary. In goes the steak. Now just keep basting it for 10 or 15 minutes, turning it, and then it'll be ready for the next stage. I'm just getting all this garlic mix and just sort of pressing it into the steak, filling it with the flavour of the rosemary and the garlic. Pop it in there for a moment. The grill on. Well, I think that's done, and what I'm going to do now is just pop it in some silver foil there, let it relax. We'll come back to that. Do some tomatoes. Right, Right, time to plate up. Here's my steak. Little Scooby snack. Put that there, got some lovely garlic bits. Good job I'm not in the marital home this evening. Keep that nice and clean, and then I'm not going to manage that one, I'll have to use a spoon. Some tomatoes on the side. What about that? I'm going to be absolutely honest with you, this is take 2. I cut into the steak, and although it was juicy tender, it was just a bit too mooing for me, I'm afraid. So I've tried to, what I've done, I've put it back on the pan for a little bit and I've let it relax, and I've tried to make it look as though it hasn't been hacked, and actually I've not done a bad job, but best to be honest about these things. So I think what I did was I didn't baste it for long enough in that deep sort of butter bath, and I should have done that for another 5 or 10 minutes. And the grilling should be nothing more than just a bit of charring on the surface, so it should be cooked through really with that butter technique. But you live and learn. Just get a nice bit here. Hopefully, yeah, phew. That's how I like my steak. Nice and juicy, nice and pink, but it was just a little bit jelly like, so that's good for me. Let's give it a go. Oh. It is so tender. Nice garlic on, some nice garlic in there now. Oops. Now that is a steak. Let's be honest about these things. It's just how I like it now. Juicy, pink. Oh. I was hoping we had some deer coming over, but it's some cows that have got very close to the fence. Probably smelt this. Sorry, cannibalism. Bit of tomato. I very nearly just plugged on with that steak as it was and just thought, actually no, I just would be pretending to enjoy it a bit more than I was for the camera, and so it's just right now. And I'll get on with this, get the kettle on, and I'll speak to you in a little bit. It's hot chocolate time. I quite often like finishing off a evening meal with a bit of cheese and biscuits if possible, and a couple of things I've got to tell you about here. One is this mango chutney. If you ever go to Burnsall, just near me in Yorkshire Dales, you want to go to a cafe called the Wharf View Cafe. It's just fantastic. If you go there on a Saturday, you'll get an extremely handsome waiter. But they make this mango chutney, and I don't know how they do it, but it's just got a tiny bit of sort of spiciness to it. It's got so many flavours, and it's just delicious. I'm going to have a little bit now. The picture, and there's the Wharf View Cafe mango chutney. So get yourself down there, get some of the really good home cooked food made on premises, and yeah, this is good stuff. And the other thing is that my really good friends Sally and Di, great YouTube supporters, great pals, they sent me this hot honey and it's just brilliant. It's sort of a chili infused honey, and it's got a really good kick to it, and it goes perfectly with cheese and biscuits, cheese and oat cakes, whatever. And there you go. Thanks Sal and Di, your pals, and thanks for this. Oh, really, really good. Oh, it packs a punch, that chili. Well, what a great evening. Cows have managed to get through somehow, so they're kind of looking at me from the very bottom of the forest, which is a little bit disconcerting, but I'm sure they mean no harm. I've got my little candle going as a little lantern, and I've had a good clear up. It was a bit like a teenager's bedroom. So, all ready for the morning. I'm just going to chill out for a little bit. It's 10:15 already, but I'll just chill out whilst the light fades and get into the hammock and give this a go. Those of you that have followed the channel for a while know that this sort of hammock camping doesn't generally suit me. I don't get a very good night's sleep, if at all, sometimes. But I'm going to give it another go. If it doesn't work this time, I'm going to start saving my pennies for one of these Hammock Drama hammocks where you can sleep across the line of the ridge line, so you can do a sort of a flat bed as well. So I think Simon's got one. I think he's used it quite recently. So I'd like to get one of those one day, but I think they're about 500 quid, which is a lot of money for a hammock. But there you go. Anyway, great meal. Really enjoyed my cheese and biscuits. Really enjoyed being out, and I particularly enjoy sharing it with you. So I'll get to bed very shortly and speak to you in the morning. Good night. Not a very nice sight for you all, I'm afraid. Lovely. It's the most perfectly quiet night. And just lovely bird song this morning. Sleep-wise, about... Excuse me. About 4.5, 5 hours, so not great. Can't get comfortable, really. But I was warm and I was out, so that's the main thing. And it's time to get the fire going and get some breakfast on. Wife's saying, just checking you're alive. I'm happy with that. And just for the sandwich bit, I've got some golden syrup. And plonk. That'll do me nicely. And that's what it's all about. I just had a text from my wife saying, am I alive? Nice to check these things. Very much so. Right, we'll finish this, pack up camp and I'll have a word with you before I go. All done, I'm ready for the off. I've got the bike packed up a lot better than coming here, but then again I've eaten all the food and I've used loads of stuff, so it's really not unexpected, but absolutely brilliant. Really enjoyed it. I hope you did. I've left absolutely no trace. I doused the fire, I've covered it up. Hopefully you can see here that there's no signs of there ever being a fire at all. And the bike was still there, and crikey, it was well camouflaged. Brilliant. And what a day we have today. How about that? Bright blue skies. And there is my trusty steed. And hopefully it'll take me back. About 6 miles home, I think. Great stuff. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please, the usual, subscribe and like these videos. Please try and make a comment. I really do appreciate feedback, something you'd like to see, something you see less of, that sort of thing. But the main thing is just give it a thumbs up. Seem to have plateaued a little bit on the channel. I mean, I'm really pleased with the amount of subscriptions I've got, but it would be nice for those to climb. But for now, it's been good to see you. I look forward to seeing you again.